Hey y'all, you're listening to Criminalist Behavior Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about episode number 15. And in this episode, it is really suspicious. We don't know if it's murder, suicide, police cover-up. But this case particularly involves the murder of Nanette Krentel. If this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Sarah Soudier, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. So a very, very big trigger warning, y'all. Oh my God. This particular episode contains content of a graphic nature, including physical violence against animals and people, particularly a 49-year-old woman named Nanette Krentel. Before I start, though, I want to thank y'all for being patient with me. I usually try to put out 2 or more episodes a week. This week it looks like I'm only going to put out this one, but I've just been having a lot going on. I had a family friend of mine pass away suddenly. My grandfather was in ICU. I mean, you name it. It's been happening, but we're getting through it. I'm so buying a crap load of sage because, oh my God, it needs to stop. This is just chaotic. But thank y'all very, very much for being patient with me and getting these episodes out. And I'm going to just go ahead and jump right on in. So, Nanette Krentel. She was also known as Nan Watson. And she was born on July 26, 1967 in New Orleans, Louisiana, to her father, Dan Watson. She had siblings. Articles mention that they were their half-siblings, but they all considered each other just like regular brothers and sisters. And her sisters are Amy Bernard, Wendy Watson, Kim Watson, Lisa Watson, and the brother is Chad Dannenhauer. And within all that, she had her nieces and nephews, Corey, Shelby, Colin, Brennan, and Andrew. She was a retired pre-K teacher, and she was enjoying retirement from her career. And instead of caring for kids like she would normally do, being a pre-K teacher, she now devoted all her time and love on her pets. She loved to bake, and her sister said she had an infectious laugh and was always the life of the party. She drove a red 2011 GLK Mercedes 350 SUV, and she was also known to be a woman with soulful eyes and a contagious laugh. A zest for life and her love for animals and children were very much notated. She had a Chihuahua named Harley, and Harley used to ride with Annette pretty much everywhere she went in her car. And she also had 2 cats, one named Baby Kitty and the other named Smokey. She had a kind heart and loved animals and children, and she consistently devoted her time and talents to helping others and organizations with her art and baking skills. So she met her husband, Steve, in 1994. And according to Steve stated that Nanette dazzled him from the start. Steve was married at the time and had a son when he met Nanette, but that wouldn't stop them from getting together. He called it quits, got divorced, and then, y'all, Nanette and Steve got married literally a year after they met in 1995. They then moved into a house that they had built in Lacombe, Louisiana, and this home was at 29500 Philip Smith Road off Louisiana Highway 434. It was set back from the road, and it was on 100 acres of land. Her and her husband kept many guns in the house, and they had a 9-camera surveillance system. Nanette and her husband used to target practice all over the 100-acre property, and she was just a very devoting wife, sister, and friend. So Steve was Nanette's husband, and he had been married when they met and had a son by the name of Justin Krentel, and, well, Justin's wife's name was Michelle Krentel. Stephen Krentel was head of Parish Fire Department with 5 stations, which employed more than 50 full-time firefighters to protect the city of Covington, Louisiana. He was a former fire chief, but as we get into the story, we're going to find out some situations that occurred with him and his job that also gave problems to their marriage. Apparently, before this incident happened, Steve stated that him and Nanette were working their problems out, but Nanette's family stated otherwise. Now I'm going to mention a little bit of Brian's family, particularly his brother. This was Nanette's brother-in-law. His name was Brian Krentel. Brian was a bad egg in this situation. He had a very, very, very extensive criminal history. He had a total of 15 convictions, 3 DWIs. He had charges to resisting an officer, battery, tampering with interlocks, hit and run, simple battery. He also had drug possession charges, as well as remaining after forbidden on a couple of occasions. But he described, Brian described that him and Nanette's relationship were like they were very close and very loving towards one another. He loved her like it was his real sister. But that is not the case, y'all. Brian blamed Nanette and Steve for not helping him evade one of his arrests that he had. He was in a car accident and he was under the influence, and he previously threatened to burn the Krentel's house down with Nanette in it, which this led Nanette to get multiple firearms, learn how to shoot them, and install security cameras throughout the property. And we're going to get into some details in regards to Brian as we get into this case. I just wanted to catch you up a little bit about some people involved in this. That way you are not completely lost. So we're going to move down to 2011. In 2011, Nanette messages her family stating that Brian, Steve's brother, aka her brother-in-law, started threatening her. Nanette began emailing her father, Dan Watson, in Iowa, about the danger she thought her brother-in-law, Brian, would do to her once he got out of prison. Nanette stated in her email, open quotations, "When he says, 'I will start your house on fire and kill you when you come out,' that is a serious threat," close quotations. Brian is a repeat offender, and he has never been publicly named interest or suspect in this case. And as afraid as Nanette was, she wanted to be able to say, well, who's at my gate? Because no one should be here. They had 2 different camera systems, one for the gate and one for the cameras around the home. Emails and text messages make it clear Nanette was armed and afraid. Nanette and Steve had 30 guns located throughout the house, and the couple liked to target shoot on their 100-acre property, but the sport of it turned to protection as Nanette's concerns grew in regards to Brian. So Nanette asked Steve to put cameras showing all areas of the house with the monitors so she could see that 24/7. And she wanted to make sure that it recorded, and there was pepper spray placed at both of the doors, and of course guns. And according to Dan Watson, Nanette's father, he stated, "This is a statement she always made. So long as I have my guns and cameras, I'm at home, I'm safe." So she thought that she would be safe in her home because she had the gun, she had the cameras and the pepper spray. You know, everybody feels secure in their own home. But then things get turned chaotic. So Nanette emails indicate that that wasn't the only thing that caused friction in her and Steve's marriage in the weeks before her death. Nanette said her concerns about Brian and Steve's perceived lack of action were coming to a head. So Nanette wanted Steve to stand up for her, and she stated, open quotations, "If he doesn't start protecting me, if he doesn't try to protect me from Brian and his family, I'm kicking him out," close quotations. So at this point, her family knows that she's been getting guns and cameras due to her fear of Brian. So they stated that she lived in fear, and she's been having severe threats, and she wasn't feeling safe, and she didn't want her dad to go there and visit because she didn't want him involved in it. Her sister Kim invited her to go to her house, even said that she could bring her pets with her, just until she felt like she was safe. But Nanette stated that she will be fine. She felt that she would be safe at her house. So family members say those threats that came from Brian Krentel included warnings of rape, murder, and burning the house down. Nanette's father, Dan Watson, stated that Brian was angry because they contributed to him being sent to prison due to him driving under the influence, and they didn't help him evade their arrest. Like, hell no, I wouldn't either. So Dan stated that his daughter became so fearful that she refused to go to her mother-in-law's home, which is where Brian lived, and the stress of the situation caused a very, very big strain in their marriage. Steve tells Eyewitness News, "After discussing her fears many times, we addressed all concerns to the best of our abilities. That is why she was comfortable at home." It is to take note that when Steve installed cameras at his home and the gate of the property, he also installed cameras at his parents' house because he feared that his brother Brian would be capable of doing something, and he just wanted to be peace of mind with the video surveillance, and he wanted to make sure that he would know what would happen if something were to ever happen. So the threats were made through various mediums, including text messages and phone calls, and all of that has been turned over to authorities. The never before seen messages reveal a woman who felt danger was imminent, and the real reason that she was afraid the month that she died. So Nanette was sending her father emails to an old email address that he had, and they didn't discover this until after this incident happened. So her husband, which was the acting chief of the St. Tammany Fire District 12, installed surveillance cameras around their wooded 100-acre property to make his wife feel safe. And they had a total of 9 cameras. On the day that this incident happened, apparently none of these cameras were able to capture it. The cameras couldn't capture who killed or what happened to Nanette. The cameras were installed by Steve, but they gave Steve an alibi because he also installed cameras at the fire department in which he worked. So that was his alibi. His alibi right there says on camera he's shown to be at work prior to this incident happening. So he had what he believes to have a steadfast alibi. And he was seen on those cameras throughout the day of this incident. But a odd turn of events will come to light as we get through this case. So the FBI went through all his records, and they noted that Steve's cell phone goes to the fire station. He's around the fire station, and several people at the fire station also accounted for Steve throughout the day. They went and met some of the people out back, and then plodded back to the fire station before he got the call that his house was on fire. And the family members stated that they still have lingering questions about him from, among other things, and the cameras. So Randy Groton stated, "Why is it all of a sudden the cameras weren't working that day?" Which is Nanette's sister Kim's boyfriend, who was also a longtime volunteer firefighter. That is a good question. Why all of a sudden, just this day, they were not working? Fishy, fishy, fishy. Now we're going to jump down to the year 2015. Y'all. Steve was having an affair with a subordinate at his work. Nanette's friend Lori confirmed that Nanette knew about the affair, and Nanette's family stated that she was thinking about leaving Steve, but Steve later said that they supposedly worked out their marital issues. Now, this is, of course, only on behalf of Steve's account, because Nanette stated to her family that she was going to leave, so it's suspicious. So, the Civil Service Board attorney Henry Oland questioned Detective Tim Wilson, as Tim Wilson made allegations that Steve engaged in inappropriate relationships with a female subordinate that compromised the chief's ability to supervise her and opened the department to charges of sexual harassment. So Tim stated that the two appeared at a fire district social event and were seen hanging all over each other. And he had no proof that the woman received favorable treatment within the department as a result of her and Steve's relationship as being the chief, but he wanted to make it known that he was having an affair, and it was with a subordinate, so therefore there could be sexual harassment allegations that happened within the fire department, and he wanted to prevent this from happening. He also believed that Steve wasn't running the department correctly, and there was like some other faulty stuff. But this ended up with a long investigation in regards to Steve and Williamson. But he predicted before Nanette's death that either Steve would be killed, either by his wife or the lady he was having an affair with's husband. It was very obvious what was going on. So they weren't trying to hide it. Steve and the subordinate worker were not trying to hide that they were being involved and having an affair. But yeah, either Nanette was going to kill Steve, or the person he was having an affair with may have, once he found out, killed Steve in regards. So it was nothing but drama Steve was bringing to the department. And the board of St. Tammany Fire Protection District number 12 voted to return Fire Chief Steve Krentel to his job as a chief of administration. So he was no longer the chief of the fire departments. He was just the chief of administration. So they pretty much demoted him. The board had been expected to address the results of a 5-month investigation into the complaints about Steve, but they deferred action on that matter that was set at that meeting. However, the board voted to remove him as chief just as his probationary period came to an end. The members did not cast the decision as a disciplinary action, but he was also potentially about to face disciplinary action following an investigation into the complaints that were alleged against him. He said that the board was simply taking the steps to protect the organization. So Steve Krentel stated that he thought that the fire department was doing a smart thing to do this until matters were resolved. He believes that he was treated fairly, and he don't view the board's action was a form of punishment. So May 2017, Nanette texts her sister Kim about Brian's specific threats. Nanette texts Kim telling her that Brian had threatened to set the house on fire, rape her, and kill both her and Steve. In June 2017, Nanette emailed her father once again. This time, it regarded a strange man being on her property. She sent her father a photo from the security cameras of a man who approached her outside of her house. Nanette found a knife and cigarette butts on her property as well, and she feels that that is proof that someone else is visiting the property. She told her father that she thought she was being followed. Another quick little side note, Steve's cousin lived on the property as well, but he lived a good ways away from the house. But just take note that somebody else does live on their property. On July 13th, 2017, in the evening, Steve comes and he noticed that the security system at their home has been deactivated. He finds that the gate security system had been deactivated, but he doesn't stop to reset them. Their surveillance camera was installed in 2 separate systems. The gate cameras were not working, but the ones on the inside, however, we're not sure yet, right? The surveillance cameras, the house ones, fed into a digital video recorder, which was also known as a DVR, which was located in the living room of the house. The video was stored locally, so it wasn't on the internet, so if something happened to this DVR box, then the video would be lost. That DVR was one of the 2 places that was doused with an accelerant before someone set fire to the house. Sources with knowledge of the investigation say that the master bedroom near the window also had an accelerant poured on it, and it's going to get graphic. They had accelerant poured all over the carcasses of little Harley, Smokey, and baby Kitty. The recorder was so badly damaged by the fire that detectives told the family even the FBI could not record any video from it. Now, it is to note that this DVR was supposedly supposed to be sent to the FBI, but there was no known status that the FBI ever received this, and there was no report stating of any findings or not. So, till this day, we still don't know if they ever reviewed this. The DVR and the cat carcasses were all left behind in ash and rubble. And the Louisiana State Fire Marshal conducted their initial search on the fire scene the day after the fire. A private investigator hired by Steve found the cats and a shotgun 2 days later. So the initial fire marshal did not notice the cats and a shotgun, and they literally released this scene until Nanette's father, Dan, came, and then they found some more information. The 2 agencies then, 5 days later, after all this scene has been tainted, 2 agencies resecured the scene 5 days later after the fire. After firearms testing revealed 2 guns secured during the initial search did not match the bullet found in Nanette's head. So, why not search the whole rubble? Do not release this crime scene until you have all of the information needed for your investigation. You didn't find the gun initially, but you just gave the crime scene back to Dan, and he could have done anything to it. As far as the other set of cameras at the gate, They were controlled by a wireless device called a MIFI that fed video to the internet, and they frequently stopped working on several occasions. And conveniently, you guessed it, of course they weren't working on the day of this. So, the day before the fire, apparently the MIFI had gone out and needed a reset. Something that Steve said happened regularly. Steve had attended the St. Tammany Parish Council meeting the night before and said that he was tired and wanted to get something to eat, so he didn't stop to reset this on his way back to the house. So the gate cameras didn't capture any clues for investigators about what happened on the day of the incident. So now we get to the day of the incident, y'all. Friday, July 14th, 2017, started off as a typical day. Nanette made her husband Steve, the then fire chief of St. Tammany Parish Fire District 12, she made her husband lunch before he left for work. He woke up for work. Nanette set out his clothes and made him a peanut butter sandwich. Nanette then walked him out to his truck, holding their dog Harley, to say goodbye around 7:40 a.m. They had the same conversation as they would as any other day, and that morning was no different. Nanette walked him to his truck with her Chihuahua Harley clutched in her arms, and so the little dog would see that Steve was leaving and wouldn't drive her crazy that he was about to return. He would jokingly talk to the dog and tell it to behave and don't be bad, and they would go back and forth over whether the animal understood them. So by 7:40 a.m., Steve then was on his way to St. Tammany Fire Protection District Number 12 office, where he called his widowed mother to check on her, and then called Nanette back to let her know how her mother-in-law was doing. A conversation that ended when he arrived at work. So, sounds like a normal day. That would be the last time he would ever speak to his wife. He was married to Nanette at this time for 22 years. On July 14, 2017, after Steve done left for work, Nanette then traveled to McDonald's and she got her some breakfast. It's believed that Nanette left to get breakfast from a McDonald's drive-thru. Surveillance video shows Nanette's car, a red 2011 GLK Mercedes 350 SUV, pull into the drive-thru with a driver who looked like Nanette, and there was movement in the vehicle that appeared to be Harley, which was Nanette's dog. Cell phone tracking confirmed that her cell phone was in the car at that time, but some members of Nanette's family do not believe that she was driving. But they don't explain why they don't believe that she was driving. So at 9:11 a.m., Nanette is seen arriving at home, and this is through cameras in the neighborhood, and it captures her arriving at her place. At 10:03, Nanette calls Kmart for a prescription to be refilled. 1:30 p.m., Nanette places a call on her cell phone. Now, this call is placed, but the person that Nanette called later says that it was the wrong number. So Nanette missed out a number, and it was unknown of who she was trying to contact at that time. So at 2:30 p.m., July 14th, 2017, 911 is called by a nearby neighbor. It's placed after a neighbor's child notices flames while riding their bike in the neighborhood. On the afternoon, the fire department responds to the fire. So this happened at 2:30 p.m. So once they get the call, They immediately head to the house. The fire department responds immediately. The house is fully engulfed in flames by the time the first unit arrives. Now, there are really different reports stating that Steve was the first to arrive on scene after the call came into the station. Was it before the call came into the station? It's a little bit fishy, but this is what we got. On the afternoon, the fire department then puts out the fire, and they immediately search for Nanette and the animals. The fire department puts out the fire, and they search for Nanette in the wreckage. They soon find her body. Her body was located in the master bedroom. She was lying face up on the floor and burned beyond recognition. Beyond recognition. The remains of the family dog, Chihuahua, Harley, was found next to Nanette, and also the remains of the two cats, Smokey and baby Kitty, were found in the house. All of which will come down to being part of another situation that occurred on this day. So, the house burned to the ground, and investigators found the charred remains of the animals as well as Nanette. And investigators were thought that they all died due to the fire, that it was smoke inhalation. And on the afternoon of July 15th, the very next day, investigators then go and search the rubbish of what's left of the home. They evaluate the house and find that accelerant had been used to start the fire in at least two places. The master bedroom where Nanette's remains were found, and the living room where the recorder for the house security cameras were used. The fire is quickly ruled as arson, but some reports say that it was ruled as arson, but others stated that the fire department could not rule it as arson due to stipulations of arson requirements. So, it should be noted that the scene is cleared and released, and then resecured 5 days later, as I previously stated. The sheriff's, this happened, like, they released the home and then they started securing it again because sheriff's office finds that none of the guns that had been taken from the scene matched anything that happened to Nanette. So, at this point, investigators decide that they want to search the crime scene again, and they left behind the security camera recorder during the first search. So, they didn't even grab the security camera recorder. They didn't finish searching the crime scene for these guns, and they just released this crime scene. So, initially, they want to declare Nanette's death as the fire. The fire is what killed Nanette. Then it comes down to saying that Nanette died by suicide. There's no clauses stating that she died of suicide. No notes, no nothing. How did they lead to that? Maybe because they were having marital affairs. I'm not sure. But then, y'all, Nanette was found with a bullet wound to her head. Nanette was dead before this fire even started, as well as her pets. Each one of them were all shot. And then the house was doused. So, on July 17th, Dan, Nanette's father, goes ahead and visit the home along with his daughter Kim, which was a criminal prosecutor, and her boyfriend Randy Groton, which was a long-time volunteer firefighter. So, you got a criminal prosecutor and a volunteer firefighter visiting the home after. Okay. During this time, they spotted an assault rifle type of gun in the rubble that had been left there, seen by investigators once the scene had been cleared and released to the family. So, Kim's boyfriend, Randy, found another weapon that the police just didn't get. On July 21st, 2017, the press confirms that Nanette's remains have been found in the home, and a memorial service was held at 1 p.m. that day. It was held at the St. Michael's Episcopal? I'm sorry, y'all, I'm trying. But I think it's Episcopal Church in Mandeville, Louisiana. The service was attended by all her family members, friends, and other members of the community and her former co-workers. Officials held a press conference because there was some information that leaked at the memorial. The fact that Nanette had been shot was released. This is when everybody found out that she didn't die due to the fire or by suicide. She died with a bullet wound. A bullet wound to the head, y'all. Her family learns this due to social media sources. They didn't hear this from the sheriff's office itself, which created tension and questions about the sheriff and their investigation means. Which, hell, it would give me suspicions too, because not only did you release a crime scene prior to it being fully searched and detained, you then had information leak out. This is some shady shit. So, not good. So, after the conclusion of Nanette's memorial service, officials then gathered to discuss the release of this leaked information. And according to Randy Smith, which was St. Tammany Parish Sheriff, he stated, open quotations, "On this morning, we were made aware of a website that was releasing information before it could be released to you all, the media, and to the family about the cause of death from the coroner's office." Close quotations. I think he just said that so he could try to CYA. He wanted to cover his ass. August 18th, 2017, Nanette's father requested a temporary restraining order against Steve and the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. This was because they wanted to file a petition for injunction relief. So they requested restraining orders against all agencies involved in the investigation because they were afraid that a cover-up was about to take place and that they would cremate Nanette, and there was no active investigation or other means to be found involving this case. So they wanted to stop that from happening. The restraining order was granted, and they forced all the agencies involved to preserve all evidence and materials related to their investigation. So on October 22nd, the coroner agreed to the family's request to preserve the remains of Nanette, and a second autopsy was going to be completed that was hired by Nanette's family. Initially, the St. Tammany Parish office treated her death as a suicide. They stated that this was because they found 2 handguns near her body. Like, as previously stated, though, there's more than 30 guns in this home. They were everywhere. So, not necessarily suicide. Anyways, until 1 week later, that's whenever they found, y'all, a week later. This is when they found a bullet wound to her right temple. There was no exit wound and no sign of soot in her lungs, indicating she was not alive when the fire was started. The cause of death was quickly overturned. So, you want to rule it a suicide, but there was no soot in her lungs. So, if your claim is she set the house on fire, shot herself, and then what? Make it make sense, y'all. Make it make sense. she would have soot at some point in her lungs if she was still alive and she decided to commit suicide. It just doesn't add up. It really does not add up. Ballistic proofs is what got this to overturn. They proved that neither gun that they found initially on the first search killed Nanette, and this is when they decided to secure the crime scene yet again with the barricades, yellow tape, and a whole 9 yards looking for the weapon that was used on Nanette. They found more than 30, but none definitively matched the gun, or so they thought. But a year later, family members were provided information concerning the caliber of weapon used in her death, which was a gun matching that same caliber that was located inside the home near her body. And this was a 40 millimeter caliber handgun. This is the weapon that was found, and this is the weapon that Nanette had always carried with her. So, 2 months later, the coroner, Charles Preston of St. Tammany, stated that he found no smoke or burn debris in Nanette's respiratory system, and this is when he declared her death as a homicide. Not a suicide, as the sheriff's office wanted to very, very adamantly state. It was a homicide. That same afternoon, this is when Sherry Randa Smith then decided to turn his story around, and he issued a news release saying that his agency didn't support the coroner's findings. They didn't believe that Nanette died of a homicide. They believed that it was suicide. Keep this in mind as we're going to go on in this case, and y'all going to hear later that something else happens. Anyways, this is when the public was outraged, and so outraged that another press conference had to be held. The sheriff then recanted his statement, and he really didn't recant it per se, though. He then stated that they treated this investigation as a homicide from day one, which is not true. You literally said in a news release that you was treating it as a suicide, and you didn't believe the coroner's findings when he ruled this case as a homicide. But now you're stating that you're treated this case as a homicide from day one? No, you didn't. No, sir, you didn't. So on September 13th, 2017, this morning is the morning that Nanette's remains are autopsied, and this is when her death was ruled as a homicide. The coroner's office performs 2 autopsies. The second at the request of Steve, and it was ruled that they both came up with it was a homicide. There's no evidence of smoke inhalation, and it states that she had to be killed before the fire started. She had been shot in her right temple, and they found that the small caliber bullet was still lodged in her head. Yeah. September 2017, they reviewed everything through the autopsy records, and they had to reconstruct Nanette's skull to confirm the findings. A review of the autopsy records by independent pathologist Dr. Thomas Bennett performed this other autopsy and reconstructed Nanette's skull, and he confirmed the same findings of the original coroners. So, you know the coroner isn't in cahoots with the sheriff, because he ruled it as a homicide from day one, unlike the sheriff's office. So, Dr. Thomas Bennett was commissioned by Dan Watson, Nanette's father, and he agreed that it was a homicide because the lack of smoke inhalation. He stated that death wouldn't be instantaneous, even with a gunshot to the head. The pathologist would have expected soot in her airways if she had set the fire herself. This is because whenever someone shoots their self, they also have 6 minutes that their brain automatically just keeps working. And if that happened, then she would have soot in her lungs. The brain lasts 6 minutes and keeps breathing. The body keeps breathing because the brain muscles control that. And this just means that Nanette didn't set that fire. Someone else did. So, they also stated that the fire didn't reach her till after she was dead. And they also expected a larger amount of blood at the crime scene due to the gunshot for her head. The pathologist determines that the lack of blood around the body at the scene suggests that she may have been killed in another location and then placed there. Yeah, because let's just go with the theory that she committed suicide. There would be blood around that body. There would be blood evidence. There was no blood located near her body. So yeah, she was shot somewhere else and placed there. Then conveniently, cameras weren't working. So investigators immediately took to the husband. He was immediately ruled as a suspect, as the husband always is. And they looked at him saying that since they've been having marital problems due to his affair with another woman, they thought that he may be capable of doing this. Steve tried stating with them that they worked past those problems in their marriage and they were good. But according to Nanette's family, Nanette expressed that she wanted to leave Steve. And St. Tammany Parish Sheriff Randy Smith, he publicly cleared Steve as a suspect after Steve took a lie detector test and he passed it. But we all know lie detectors don't hold true to court, right? They don't hold up. So on September 14th, Steve is cleared and he has an airtight alibi as he passed the polygraph regarding the crime, and he's also seen on the video cameras at the fire station. The FBI joins this investigation on October 25th, 2017. They came to aid the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office to Nanette's death. Well, they need to, because obviously the Sheriff's Office isn't really doing much of anything. The following statement is released by the FBI spokesman. Following the death of Nanette Krentel, the FBI New Orleans field office has continued to maintain constant contact with the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office and affiliated law enforcement agencies. As this matter progresses, we will provide investigative assistance as needed. And this is an ongoing and active matter, and we're not able to comment further at this time. Okay? So, Steve then returns to work on November 1st. So this happened in July. So, 4 months? He returns to work, and he is investigated for the affair he had with the coworker and other disciplinary issues that were talked about. And after he returns, he is probed by the Civil Service, and this relates to destruction of property, and investigation was constructed by the Fire District Civil Service Board and is considered completely separate from the murder investigation. So they're investigating Steve on other counts of misfortunes happening, and he's still got to be investigated for the murder, y'all. On November 8th, 2019, according to the Huffington Post, they published an interview with an investigator, And they stated that the sheriff's office stated, "We don't understand the coroner's ruling. This is all for naught. We know what happened. There's no mystery. The death is a suicide." So they're still adamant saying that this death was a suicide. Hello, confirmed. 2 coroners. Homicide. She was shot. No slit in the lungs. It's damn near called a solved case right there. Just who did it, right? Well, a member of Nanette's Archbishop Capel High School in Metairie, Lori Rando, also a very good friend of Nanette, told People's Magazine that her best friend exhibited signs of depression after Steve admitted to her he was having an affair. So she stated the last few months of her life, she started pulling away. There was less and less contact between her friends, and her family. So, expanding on the suicide theory, let's recount what Nanette did the last day and consider what happened if she did kill herself, right? So, according to Walgreens surveillance, Nanette's credit card and cell phone location services, Nanette's Mercedes went through a drive-thru at a McDonald's on North Shore Boulevard in Slidell the morning of the fire. She bought a $7 breakfast and had Harley in the front seat beside her. And family members said that Harley went everywhere with Nanette and could even be identified in that grainy video shown from the Walgreens cameras. These clues tell everyone that Nanette decided to have a good breakfast, and then she went home. At 9:11 a.m., the security camera on Philip Smith Road picked up their Mercedes returning to her house. Nanette's phone records listed an outgoing call to Kmart at 10:03, and workers there said a woman claiming to be Nanette phoned about a prescription refill. These clues tell us Nanette decided to have a hearty breakfast and order new medication mere hours before killing herself. In the early afternoon, according to a lady who did not know Nanette or Steve, stated that Nanette accidentally called her, and Nanette's cell phone records confirmed that call happened around 1:30 p.m. At 2:30 p.m., this is when 911 got the call from a neighbor who said that the house was on fire. So given all of this information, if Nanette decided to kill herself after getting off the phone with Kmart, she had roughly 3 hours to start fires in at least 2 rooms after dousing the house, security camera equipment, and her pets that she loved with gasoline. Next, she then would enter the master bedroom with 3 handguns. She would then decide which one to use and put a bullet into her right temple. The bullet would never exit her skull, and the gun fell into a hidden location, making the other 2 handguns easier for police to find. She stopped breathing long before the fires reached her body, so she must have somehow diluted her accelerant to make it burn slower, other than regular gasoline. And the slow-burning fires would have also had to accelerate after she died, as the flames engulfed and destroyed the entire home before they arrived at 3 p.m. So, the sheriff's office suicide theory doesn't seem to be even capable of factual information. Why in the hell would you have 3 guns by your body? But the one gun that was supposedly used as a suicide attempt cannot be located near the body. If it was suicide, the gun would be right there. If she shot herself in the right temple, she wouldn't be able to move. You think she loved her cheating husband that much that she would want to just shoot herself? Nah. I don't think so. And she loved her animals. She would not douse them in gasoline. Really? Why would that happen? And if she was worried about suicide, who gives a damn? If she was so content on being suicide, why would she burn the camera equipment? That don't even make any sense. Why would she burn the house? The bullet itself would kill her. What the? Y'all make it make sense. Make it make sense. So, the fire marshal office stated that they believe that the fire was intentionally set, but they can't rule it arson. And the reason they can't rule it an arson because the state's criminal statute for arson reads the following: the intentional damaging by any explosive substance or the setting fire to any property of another without consent of the owner. That is what arson is. So they stating that it can't be led to an arson because they're not sure if there was consent or not. That don't make sense because they're going with the theory that she committed suicide. That's all. That's why they're doing that. So, the investigation to the death. When friends and loved ones were coming to terms with the 49-year-old Nanette passing away, they were hit with another gut punch. And Melissa Serpis stated, I had a funny feeling from the beginning. Something just didn't seem right to me, but the timing was heartbreaking. It was just very, very sad. So, this was after the news that they heard that she had been shot prior to the fire. So, Randy Smith says the investigation had been leaked by a Baton Rouge website that day, leaving him no choice but to reveal it to the public. But he wasn't trying to reveal it to the public, or so he says. He stated, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Krentels and the Watsons. From what we understood, there was some information released to them from the State Fire Marshal Board about the information that was on the website out of Baton Rouge. I apologize for not giving them the heads up before they got the information from the media. That is what Sheriff Randy Smith stated. He's just trying to make himself look good. Let's call a spade a spade. It also called into question the quality of the investigation, right? To determine the cause of the fire. So Fire Marshal Butch Browning, who was on scene the fire 2 weeks after the fire, and he says that his agency is doing everything right, which only operates in fact and will not be distracted by a website. So they stating that regardless of what the website says, they're only basing their findings off of factual information and evidence at hand. So St. Tammany Parish Sheriff Randy Smith described the investigation into Nanette's murder very difficult due to the intensity of the fire. It burned the home to the ground and obviously the surveillance with it. Meanwhile, they stated that the pets were found in the fire with Nanette, the 2 cats and the dog, and they went to LSU for necropsies. The result of how they died had been received, and it was ruled that all 3 had been shot and laced with the accelerant. That is just horrible in itself. Like, it's one thing to get upset. I just don't understand the life, how you could set up these animals, like pour accelerant on them. I mean, I hope that the accelerant and them being caught on fire was not before they were shot. It's bad enough to say that they were shot. Like, hopefully they didn't feel that pain of that fire being burned alive. Like, I really, really, really hope that. We know for sure that Nanette didn't because of the soot, but the animals had soot in their lungs. So that leads me to tell me that these poor, poor animals were alive when they were burning. That is just so freaking sad. So sad. So, they stated in a press release after this that apparently Randy Smith, aka this lovely famous sheriff, he stated, like I said, we have worked this case and will continue to work this case tirelessly and aggressively. And we have worked this case as a homicide since day one. Bullshit. bullshit. You have not. You originally classified it as a suicide, but that shit came to end with, hello, evidence. Duh. Hours later, Nanette's father, Dan Watson, walked out of the courthouse at St. Tammany, and he received that 6-month-long restraining order stating that he could preserve all the evidence, right? He stated that his greatest fear at that point was that there was no suspects, but they haven't done any reports. Normally, he said where he came from, which he was living in Iowa, he said, you don't release a body unless you have all the information complete, including the reports. Duh, that makes sense. Hello, Dan, you're on to something. You're right. Dan also stated, it just has a really bad feel to it. My fear is that they're going to stall and not do anything, and then eventually it'll be pushed under the rug and we won't know anything. Yeah. Because politics can make themselves look bad. They said that Nanette's death may be ruled a suicide and maybe might have her body cremated, which would eliminate the opportunity for a second autopsy to be done. So that's why they petitioned for the remains to be preserved, so that could not happen. And it was Judge Raymond Childress who issued that temporary restraining order to have her body preserved. It is to be known that coroner Charles Preston made a statement saying that it is unnecessary for a second autopsy to be performed or for the evidence to be preserved. So they continue to probe the death, and obviously the judge ruled for it to be preserved regardless of what you say. Okay, so Nanette Krentel's family started an online petition to raise money for their own investigation. Gina Watson, which was a cousin of Nanette, wrote on an online petition, open quotations, although we would like to rest easy knowing justice will be served, it feels as though we are fighting for Nanette's voice to be even heard. We do not know how long this fight will take, but this is the fight of our lives. Close quotations. So the family paid for this medical examiner who agreed to take the case and travel to Louisiana to perform the second autopsy. The lawyer's retainer and second autopsy cost between $8,000 to $10,000. So this is what they started this online petition to raise money for. So, like I said, the first autopsy stated that her body, that it was a suicide. The second autopsy stated that it was a homicide, and it was because she had a bullet to her right temple, no soot in her lungs. Then, once the restraining order came, and the coroner that was hired by Dan performed the autopsy, he also ruled it as a homicide. So, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Steve offered a public statement. He told Eyewitness News, I'm not opposed to and have not ever had a problem with a second autopsy being performed. All they have to do is pick up the phone and ask. I will welcome anything that will bring answers. Close quotations. Okay. He also stated, I don't know what people are doing, he said. I understand that an investigator can't reveal what is happening with an investigation, but to dispute the coroner's findings, well, that just sounds what? Suspicious. So, it wasn't until the second autopsy that the bullet was found in the right side of her temple. And it was said that Nan was feared for her life because of the threats that she received from Steve's brother, Brian, and she always had a handgun in her purse, one in the house and one in the vehicle at all times. And she had a shotgun as well. And Steve also confirmed about all these weapons in various places throughout the home. And he wasn't surprised that all these guns were just found out laying, because that's that's what made Nanette feel safe. So, like I said, there was no evidence of particulate matter or soot in Nanette's airway, leading investigators to conclude that she died before the fire was even started at the house. So, December 2017, Steve Krentel gave an additional $5,000 reward because at this time, Crime Stoppers offered a $5,000 reward and information leading to the solved case and arrest for Nanette's murderer. Any information? So Steve donated an additional $5,000 to that Crime Stoppers reward, which was nearly 5 months after Nanette's death. And this brought the full reward amount to $10,000. And this reward was set to expire on October 26, 2019. So it was to last approximately 2 years. He had made the donation in October, but Crime Stoppers didn't officially add the increased reward until that December. So December 29th, 2017, Nanette's sister Kim receives an email from a person at the Office of the Inspector General for HUD named Jerry Rogers. He was a former St. Tammany Parish detective and agent with the Office of Inspector General for HUD. And he sent an email to Kim, and this would be the first of 10 emails sent over the course of 2 years. And according to sources, these emails included information about connections between investigators working on Nanette's case, as well as advising Kim on questions she should be asking these investigators. The emails were sent from justicenanette@yahoo.com. In this first email to Nanette, in this first email to Kim, Nanette's sister, Jerry asked to remain anonymous. And he described connections, some of the investigators on the case, on how they were connected to one another, and he advised Kim on the questions that she should be asking. He would later be arrested, taken from his home in handcuffs by 3 detectives, and he was booked to St. Tammany Parish Jail on criminal defamation charges because he was emailing Kim Watson. Kim stated, open quotations, "I remember getting that first email and I didn't think a lot about it because we were getting so many from people. I want to remain anonymous, but here's what I know," Watson recalled. So Rogers told Watson questions she should ask and what was not being done by the detectives. So he was trying to help the family navigate the investigation and try to figure out who killed Nanette. He put out a little disclaimer at the bottom of the emails where it said none of this is 100% verified, so it just dots that whoever was sending it was just trying to connect dots that may or may not be there. So there were, one of the questions that he stated that Kim should ask was, why was Steve and Brian given lie detectors tests so soon in the investigation? Why in the world would somebody be given a polygraph prior to all evidence being obtained? That's what Rogers stated. And in early December, which was 6 months after Nanette was found, he wrote, "You need to ask the sheriff who the new investigator is that has taken over the case." He was referring to U.S. Marshal Jenny May, who the sheriff hired as a consultant on this investigation. So Kim stated she asked the lead detective if there was a new investigator, and if so, then why was that new investigator assigned to the case? And when they asked her how she knew that, she stated that she received emails. And this is whenever, let's see. Rogers then sent another email stating that Bucker's which was the detective hired for the case by the sheriff's qualifications were not suitable. He stated that Buckner is clueless. He wrote that the sheriff is dumb and that he should be bringing Buckner to consult on this case. So Buckner secured search warrants for the Justice Annette at yahoo.com account and Verizon Wireless to secretly get the call logs and location information for those associated accounts. A search warrant indicates that all signs pointed to Rogers as the anonymous sender in January 2019, but the sheriff's office didn't confront Rogers about it at that time. So he continued to do that until June of 2019, 6 months. Yeah, 6 months. And he told her that Buckner was leaving the investigation very soon. So that's what he was telling Kim. So Rogers' attorney, Brian Traynor, filed a motion for preliminary examinations in the 22nd Judicial District Court. He argued that he wanted to show the judge that lack of probable cause and the premise of probable cause affidavit that was alleged violation of a law that has been held unconstitutional. So Judge Scott Garner ruled that Rogers is not entitled to a preliminary examination on a misdemeanor, but he found that there was no probable cause for Rogers' arrest, and he released him. And he removed that $3,500 bond for him, so Rogers was released. There is no defamation arrest, so they doing anything but trying to find Nanette's killers. They're going to arrest one of their own because he's leaking information because they're being shady as hell. Yeah, shady as hell. So Rogers, he stated that 3 deputies showed up at his house, handcuffed him, and put him in the squad car, but they refused to tell him why he was being arrested. He said that he was shocked and he was fearful. They said that they had a warrant for his arrest, and whenever he asked what it was for, they said that they would tell him later. He didn't learn that he was being accused of defamation until the booking agent at the jail read him a press release that was issued by the sheriff. Wow. So, under Louisiana law, criminal defamation is a misdemeanor. But it remains on the books that the state Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional in most cases in 1973. And the U.S. Supreme Court in 1964 found the law's wording unconstitutional. So, yeah. Bogus. So, on December 29, 2017, Nanette's friends and family gathered to remember Nanette. They made effort to share memories of Nanette and support the friends and families for a small little vigil. January 10th, 2018, the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office releases new information regarding the crime scene. And according to Sheriff Randy Smith, they stated once again, multiple firearms were found near Nanette's body. At this time, they clarified that the weapons were found in close range to the body, but they were not going to specify the exact locations of the firearms. At least one of the weapons has been described as being unable to be ruled out, which was the 40mm handgun. And Steve later confirms that he and Nanette had more than 20 weapons with various ammo throughout the home. February 21st, 2018, Nanette's case caught the eye of Crime Watch Daily. So, yeah, Mr. Hanson himself covered Nanette's case, and it included interviews from key players in her case. So, on July 14th, 2018, which is damn near a year later, first year anniversary of Nanette's death, Nanette's friends and family gather at a gravesite to pay their respects and share memories. Steve is demoted from his position at the fire department in 2018 after a civil probe probed until his employment, and they demoted him from his title of chief. It was due to the merit that had been found regarding 2 of the complaints that had been made against him. September 1st, 2018, Steve retired from St. Tammany Fire Department, which was 10 months after civil service demoted him from being chief of District 12 of St. Tammany Fire Department. He leaves the department on September 1st, 2018, and according to him, he stated that Nanette and him had been planning for him to retire after his 50th birthday, which occurred August 16th, the month prior, and he served more than 20 years with the fire department. I still think it's fishy. I think this is all hearsay from Steve, because you got demoted and then all of a sudden you put in retirement. Now, it could be a bad source of timing, but, I mean, it just does not look good. It really does not look good. So, People's Magazine started investigating and putting features of Nanette's case in their magazine on November 5th of 2018. And they focused on her death and released an episode on Investigation Discovery. On January 14, 2019, a candlelight vigil was held, and her family and friends and members of the community gathered together to keep her memory alive. On April 11, 2019, Nanette's sister, Wendy, she is investigated for trespassing on Krentel's property, and her and a friend visited the property to see a memorial that Steve had made for Nanette, and they were only on the property for approximately 12 minutes, and they admitted that they did walk past a locked gate and surveillance cameras to get onto the property, but they wanted to see that vigil that apparently Steve made for Nanette. They were then confronted by Steve, who chased them away in his vehicle. So, you're chasing the sister and her friend away off the property in your vehicle with a car. Okay. So, on September 16, 2019, OIG agent is arrested for sharing investigation details. Agent Jerry Rogers, that's whenever he was arrested for criminal defamation after he sent Kim emails criticizing the way the sheriff's office had been handling the investigation, sharing privileged information, and both the district attorney and attorney general refused to charge him, citing unconstitutional. So, Agent Rogers then filed a lawsuit against the individual who accused him of criticizing the office. So, it's all going crazy. It looks like everything is being focused on anything and everything but who killed Nanette. So, we didn't get to October 26, 2019. The $5,000 reward expires after the case goes unsolved for 2 years. Steve's $5,000 donation refund is what expired. So, today, as of 2024, Nanette's case still sits with a $5,000 reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Louisiana. So, y'all. St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, a.k.a. Sheriff Lovely Randy Smith, he did a letter. Okay? And I'm not going to read this entire letter, but I'm going to go over skips and parts on it. But he states, I am disappointed that my political opponent had enlisted the aid of both media and organizations to try and use the tragic death of Nanette Krentel for his own public gain as we get close to election day. So, they are concerned about elections. You have somebody running against you because you're a shady-ass sheriff and you don't know how to investigate a damn case, but you're trying to use the death of Nanette for you saying that somebody's using the death of Nanette for political gain? What? Get the hell out of here. He said that he wants to set the record straight. He said, first and most importantly, since Nanette's death 2 years ago, his office has worked tirelessly to try and solve her murder and give her family peace. They have unfortunately been unable to obtain sufficient evidence to obtain a warrant for anyone's arrest. That is, however, not because of lack of effort. They said they executed in excess of 65 search warrants, excess of 45 hours of surveillance footage. conducted in excess of 80 interviews and even asked assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the United States Postal Inspection Service, the District Attorney's Office, and so on and so forth. He completely understood that the frustration surrounding this investigation, but he stated that the sheriff's office is made up of professional, high-trained individuals, and they can't arrest an individual simply because certain members decide that they want him to do so. What? You really put this in a damn letter to the public in relation to you being elected? Bruh, you got some cojones. You got the cojones. So, like I said, all of this is being classified as other investigations, other people getting arrested, other means of election. All this is happening, and still, nothing's happening with Nanette's killer. Nothing's happening with Nanette's case or an investigation of what the hell happened. So 6 months after the death of Nanette, people, excuse me, I'm sorry, it stated that it doesn't feel like they're moving forward. Everybody keeps telling them that it takes time, but they're coming up on the 6-month anniversary, and they're clueless as they were the day after Nanette passed. So they stated that they're going to get together and do their own detective work, for focusing on piecing together the timeline. And maybe somebody will remember something. Something will jog somebody's memory, and they can lead us to a clue that they may not have found before. And it is an effort to get justice for Nanette. And they don't want this to be a cold case that's swept under the rug because of the political propaganda involving Steve Krentel being the fire chief and the shady-ass sheriff. So they want her to be remembered for the wonderful person she was. So, sister got arrested 2 years after Nanette. This was because she trespassed, and they confirmed that she and a friend went on a location where she was found, and they were just looking for the memorial. Whenever she went and described the situation, she stated that they walked around a locked gate and passed surveillance cameras to get onto the property, but they said that other family members had been allowed on the property in the past, but because Steve doesn't live there, she thought it wouldn't have been a big deal for her to go. So they were on the property for about 12 minutes before they left in a vehicle. She stated that they were intercepted by Steve, and she told her friend she needed to hightail it. And that led to a high-speed chase on Interstate 12 and 10 into Mississippi as they tried to elude Steve. So Steve literally chased them off the property and was running them down with his vehicle on the freaking interstate. So Wendy Watson was staying at a Beau Rivage Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi, and she was chased by Steve off the property, and she stated that he found himself following her after she reached Mississippi. She said that she texted Randy Smith, the sheriff, during the incident, and later called her friends who works for the sheriff's office, and they contacted her and told her to return to the parish and sign a misdemeanor summons for trespassing or facing an arrest warrant. The fuck? So instead, she decided to consult her own attorney, and she returned to South Carolina, where she was living at the time. 3 years done passed, and this done turned into a cold case. A subpoena was issued. St. Tammany Parish prosecutors subpoenaed Sheriff Randy Smith for his records in the strange case of Nanette Krentel, and the subpoena from District Attorney Warren Montgomery's office was a material differences in the findings of the coroner and sheriff's office. It demanded the records by October 16th and no later. And it stated that it is unusual for a DA to resort to a subpoena to obtain records of a criminal case from the law enforcement officers who investigated it. The common practice is for prosecutors and police without a court order to meet on a less formal basis to go over the police investigation and determine how to proceed. Well, I guess that the Warren Montgomery's office stated that the sheriff is shady as hell and therefore didn't feel that everything would be given. So Randy Smith was surprised when he received that subpoena on October 14th, and he was unaware of any differences in findings, according to him, on the autopsies between his agency and that of the coroner, Charles Preston. And upon the receipt of the subpoena, he called and spoke with Dr. Preston, and apparently he too is unaware of any differences between the agencies. That's what Randy Smith said. He also stated that they will hand over a case file that includes the records of 65 search warrants, 45 hours of surveillance videos, and 80 interviews. So the records were then sent to Warren Montgomery, District Attorney, and the media has speculated that the DA brought Nanette's case up again because he is up for re-election and wanted to draw the public's favor. Again, why are you using Nanette's case as means of political gain? What the hell's wrong with you? I really despise this person. So, theories, y'all. I want to hear what y'all know about this or what y'all think about this, all these theories rolling around. But one theory is she didn't die from smoke inhalation or being burned. And 6 years after her death, investigators still trying to say they don't know if she committed suicide or if someone else shot her in the head. I think we could just X that shit out right now. Also, another theory. They stated that maybe Nanette was trying to save her cats because the fire broke out. She was trying to save her cats and her chihuahua, and that's how she died. She succumbed to that. No. If she was trying to save her animals because a fire broke out in the home, how the hell she ended up with a bullet wound to the right temple? Yeah, we could X that one up. So then another theory. They initially looked at Steve, and he freely admitted that he had an affair prior to his wife's death, and he had a supposed solid alibi with cameras that he set up at his house, his parents, and his work location. Apparently, he passed a polygraph test, which was given to him immediately. They didn't even obtain all the evidence and court documents or reports prior to him taking a lie detector test. Fishy shit. Nanette's family said that she was considering ending her family, but Steve said they worked through it. So, do y'all think that he's capable? I think he is, and it's not hard to alter surveillance. Like, if you have a means, you have a way. And if he set it up, then he was very into it. He knew what he was doing with surveillance. So I think that maybe that's a possibility. Not saying that it is, but I think it could be a possibility. Then they want to say that Justin, Steve Krentel's son, could have been a possible suspect. That's a theory. That's nothing held, that he was never officially declared as a suspect. I want that to be known. But the theory is that Nanette and Justin were supported. They had problems, according to this in particular theorized reason, but it was never stored that anybody else, they didn't think that there was any problems with Justin and Nanette other than probably typical stepmom and kid behavior, or hell, you just never even know, like, how old he is. Like, a teenager? I mean, teenagers are very defined. Hello, I got two. Yeah, very freaking defiant. I don't think that's the case. I really don't think it's Justin. But then we get to another suspect, which could be a high suspect. Steve Krentel's brother, Brian. Now, apparently, according to investigations, he too passed a lie detector test that, again, was immediately given to him after Nanette was found. And apparently, he was on a ankle monitor because he was out on parole because of that lovely arrest. However, the GPS tracker that was supposed to be embedded into that ankle monitor, guess what, y'all? Yeah, it wasn't hooked up. But apparently, he was also stated to have a solid alibi because cameras, again, Steve Krentel installed these cameras at his parents' home. Apparently, those cameras is what captured Brian on the day that Nanette was shot and the house sent to blaze. Yeah. Again, could be altered. You have a means of protecting your brother? I don't even know, but this is just all just crazy. But he did have a lengthy criminal record. He had abuse. He had domestic violence concerns. He had battery. He had DWIs. He was apparently associated with drugs. And, you know, maybe he did. Maybe it was Brian. But, again, we just don't know. Steve himself stated that he was definitely considering Brian as a suspect of interest because he had strong contempt for Nanette. So your own brother stating that he thought that it was possible. According to interviews with Brian, who went on the Crime Watch Daily interview with Hansen, he stated that he wasn't even surprised that he was accused of being a suspect. He was used to it. But he was talking about it like it was no big deal. This woman was brutally shot. Her animals were brutally murdered and a house set ablaze. And you acting very fucking casual. Yeah, no. I don't think so. Investigators firmly believe that it was suicide. We all know, I think, like I said, this bullshit. Bullshit. Because she was dead prior to the fire. There's no soot in her lungs. She had a bullet wound. No, she wouldn't. No, just no. So, I feel like it was the husband. Could have been the husband. It could have been Brian, the husband's brother. Either way, it could have been both of them. Shit, it could have been both of them. They don't seem to discuss that the credibility of his alibi. It seems, though, that they clearly question his trustworthiness, and the connections to the investigation seems very freaking fishy. Somebody stated that they were disappointed that they didn't get into his alibi and other questionable statements further, but because it could have been, there was nothing to discuss. And if this person had to guess, it sounded like the husband may have orchestrated it, and Brian planned to kill her in a fire, and guess what? It could have been his scapegoat, because he had proof that his brother threatened Nanette, said he was going to rape, murder, and set the house on fire. So Steve could have done this and put the blame on his brother. I'm okay with this theory. I really think that's a high possibility. And because the security tapes were literally doused, like, you had to know where they were, because apparently the DVR was hidden. So, oddly, accelerant was poured not only on animals and the master bedroom, but directly on that. And that's the only sources that the accelerant was used. Okay. Yeah. Horseshit. Again, it leads me to believe that Steve did that. So, Krentel's relatives and friends state they are very determined to keep her memory alive until they get some answers. They said her death left a void in the community. And a friend of Nanette spoke of her love for teaching young children, her love for animals, and her goofy laugh, and her beauty. Nanette was very beautiful, and she was 49 years old and did not deserve this. And according to her friend and classmate, Lori, she said that the only person she didn't know was the person she hasn't met yet. So she was very outgoing, very out there. And it didn't matter if you knew her for 30 years or 30 seconds. She made you feel like you were one of the most important people in the world. Yo, this is freaking crazy. As of March 2024, this case is still unsolved. There is a Facebook page that Dan Watson, Nanette's father, has, and I'm going to link it in the show notes, but on it, again, there's still a $5,000 reward from Crime Stoppers, leading to arrest and indictment of the suspects responsible for the crime. You could submit an anonymous tip at 504-822-1111. You could also remain anonymous, and you do not have to testify in court to earn a cash reward. You could call Crime Stoppers and be issued a tip number, which is the only way that they can identify you. And you must keep your number to check on a status and be eligible for the reward. You can also visit www.crimestoppersgno.org. And again, it states that Nanette's case ruled as a homicide, and there's a poster. Again, I'm gonna link that in the show notes. But on the Facebook group, again linked in the show notes, Dan Watson stated, "I am Nanette's father. I'm here to speak on behalf of Nanette. My beloved daughter was brutally murdered on July 14, 2017. It's been 5 months at that time that he created this Facebook group. I have no idea as to who committed this horrific act of violence against Nanette until there are no suspects and there are no leads. I'm very troubled and conflicted with the lack of progress in solving Nanette's murder, but there is something else about this that should be troubled to us as well. There is a cold-blooded killer in our midst, and that should be of great concern to every citizen of St. Tammany Parish. This monster has complete and total disregard for life. He shot Nanette in the back of the head. He burned her house to the ground with her body inside it until it was unrecognizable. He murdered her dog Carly and her cat's baby Kitty and Smokey. This person is sick and has no place in St. Tammany Parish or civilized society. And he is still out there. He must be caught and brought to justice for what he did. I am also here to state, and under no circumstances, that I will never stop pursuing Nanette's killer until every lead has been investigated, every possibility exhausted. Also know that I have made no assumptions about nor draw any conclusions regarding anyone's guilt or innocence. I will listen to any information about anyone that has anything available. If you know anything at all or have any information about anyone who may have been involved in this murder, I ask you to call Crime Stoppers. If you are not comfortable calling Crime Stoppers, then you can message me through this page." At this time, he was a 74-year-old man, and he stated that he was about to spend his first Christmas without his baby girl. For him, there will be no phone call, no Christmas card, no Merry Christmas, no I love you, Daddy. Oh, that hits me right in the feels, y'all. Oh my God. Please, 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 if y'all know any information, please contact. You can reach out on the Facebook page. Again, submit a tip anonymously. You could even call, please don't call that damn St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. Call the FBI, though. Not the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, because hell no, obviously they shady as hell. If you enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on all our local podcast apps: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Wondery, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to comment, like, share, subscribe. We also have our website. Again, I'm going to link it. We do have Patreons, and I will go ahead and get shout outs. We have different levels. Just let me know. Y'all can also email me at criminalbehaviorpodcast@gmail.com. I really, really, really would like to know what y'all think of this case, what y'all theorize. If y'all have any information in regards, if y'all just want to comment in regards. Also, if y'all have any case that y'all want me to cover or that I previously covered, just shoot me an email, shoot me a message. We're also located on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Insta, Tumblr. Find us. Just find us. Until then, this is your host, Sarah Soudier, and don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Criminalist Behavior, a Louisiana True Crime Podcast. Next week, we're going to have some episodes. I'm going to try to get at least 2 of them out to you, but I can assure you, every week, I'm going to at least post 1 episode. I'm going to try more, but girl, y'all, I got some freaking cases that are like, oh my God, daunting. So much information. I have 3 cases I'm working on right now that even up to the year 2024, there's still things happening in these cases. So I put those on the back burner until I can further more information in regards to them. So y'all keep tuned and follow me, and y'all just want to shoot the shit, y'all just message me. I am a very outgoing individual, and I would love to hear from you. Until then, I'll see you, I hear you, I message you next time. Goodbye.